The final category for informative speeches is speeches about processes and procedures. This is the category for your next speech. You're going to demonstrate. You're going to show how to do something. A how-to speech increases the audience's understanding about a topic. How to is about how to complete a procedure, how to complete a process. You may talk about how to make the perfect cup of hot cocoa, or how to make the ultimate peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Those are how-to speeches. Chronological order is often utilized for this kind of a speech. This is the pattern that you want to go through. When you're explaining how to, you're presenting steps, and they're given in order. You do this first, you do this second, you do this third. If you want to address the major principles and techniques or methods of a process, then you might potentially use a topical pattern, but it would be rare. It would be the abnormal application of this kind of speech. Most of the time when you're giving a how-to speech, you're going to use a chronological format. You're going to talk about the order of steps. This is what you do. This is when you do it. This is why it matters that you do it that way. All right, so if you're going to give an informative speech, you need to be able to accomplish certain things. There's some basic goals for an informative speech. First of all, you need to expand the audience's knowledge. You're trying to help them to learn something. One way you may accomplish that is by being organized and clear and accurate. The information that you give should be easy to follow. The speech should use concrete language. It should be things that are easy to understand, not things that are confusing, not words that your audience may not understand. And then finally, the information should be accurate and correct. Make sure that if you're telling someone how to do something, you're telling them the right way to do it. You should also be able to deliver the right amount of information in the right amount of time. Remember, time matters. The constraints of time are important. You don't want to go too short. You don't want to go too long. You don't want to race through it to see how much information you can cram into a short period of time. But at the same time, you don't want to drag it out. You want to get the speech moving at a good, solid, productive pace. Appropriate analogies should be used in the speech to help the receiver make connections. If you're talking about something they don't know about, relate it to something they do know about. You see Jesus doing this all the time in the parables. He takes heavenly concepts and he relates them to earthly concepts. And he talks about a sower and seed, but he's really talking about sharing the gospel or receiving the gospel. And so those are analogies. Make sure you use appropriate analogies whenever you're trying to give an informative speech. Finally, use repetition. Restate your ideas. Say it over and over and over again, because repetition helps your audience remember what they need to remember. It helps define for them what it is that is important in your speech. You have to convince the audience. This is your job. You're trying to convince the audience that they have a personal need to know what it is you're trying to tell them. That's what an informative speech does. They're more likely to listen to you if you make them realize they need to hear what you're saying. So part of your task as an informative speaker is to make your audience want to hear you, to make them want to listen to you. The audience needs to believe that the speech will somehow benefit them, that the speech is somehow going to help them. They need to believe they're going to get something out of it. And you shouldn't assume that the audience will decide the speech is important on their own. You ought to give them reasons for why the speech matters. And then you need to be able to clearly articulate those reasons, clearly tell what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, how is it relevant to the audience, why does it matter to them. It's your job to create what your book calls a hunger for information, a hunger for the speech. You're trying to cause your audience to want to consume the speech that you're giving them. So if you look at it as hunger, then your book says the introduction is the appetizer. If you have a 3-course meal, The appetizer sets the stage. It doesn't fill you up. It's not heavy. It doesn't sit on your stomach, make you where you don't want to eat anything else. But it does tickle your taste buds. It gets you interested, and it draws you into the next course. And the body then becomes the main course. This is where the meat is. This is where the substance is. This is where you deliver the information that is important. And this is where any technical stuff is, because it's part of the meat. And then finally, the conclusion is the dessert. This is where you wrap it all up. You leave it in a sweet note. You leave it in a memorable phrase. You leave it in some type of way that is going to last in their mind. They're going to remember what it is you've said. So you have an introduction that is an appetizer. You have a body that is a main course, and you have a conclusion that may be viewed as a dessert. That's one way to look at your speech. If you're going to give an informative speech, then you have to learn to adapt to your audience. Most subjects will become interesting if they are adapted to the audience. If the audience believes that it benefits them, then they're going to pay attention. If they think it adds to their knowledge, then they're going to pay attention. If you convince them that it will satisfy their curiosity about a subject, then they're going to pay attention. Or if you convince them that your speech is going to show them how they can improve their lives. Who doesn't want to improve their life? You're going to get their attention. So you need to find a way to convince them that they need to hear you. You need to find a way to convince them that they want to hear you. And then finally, you need to find a way to make your speech memorable after you finish speaking. This is the last point. You need to let the audience know why you think it's important that they remember what it is that you're telling them. And then you need to stress the main points so they know what it is they need to remember. You stress those points by using verbal cues. You get a little louder here and there. Or nonverbal cues, the communicative gestures you make with your hands, or a pause. You can pause for dramatic effect. You can put vocal emphasis. You can use gestures. All of those ways you stress the main points. Another way you can do it is repetition. We've already talked about that today. By repeating the point, by saying it again and again and again and again. When I preached chapel last week, my main point was, I'm a debtor and you're a debtor. And I spent the first 3/4 of the message saying I'm a debtor over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then I made the connection towards the end of the message to you're a debtor. And it flowed right out of all that I'm a debtor. The repetition made the point memorable. It made the point powerful. So you want to remember that. And finally, you need to, if it's an informative speech, find a way to promote audience participation. Find a way to get the audience involved. This is harder to do over mediated communication like we're doing in this class than it is in an actual face-to-face setting. It's harder for me to do. It's a whole lot easier for me to teach and lecture in a face-to-face setting than it is here sitting in my office all by myself speaking to a blank screen. That's not anywhere near as conducive to off-the-cuff thinking, and you certainly can't get the audience as involved as you would like to. So this is a point that is more applicable to face-to-face than it is to mediated communication. But when you have the opportunity, get your audience involved in the speech. That helps them remember. It helps them be drawn in. It helps them pay attention to what it is that you're saying. Now, I know I've covered a lot of information today. I've tried to cover 2 chapters and do it as briefly as possible. You are responsible for the contents of both chapters, Chapter 6 and Chapter 18. And there is your discussion post for this week. That's your only assignment this week. Just participate in the discussion post, read the material, and let's move one step closer to being a better public speaker. That pretty much wraps it up. I hope you have a great week. If you have any questions, or if there's something I should have said that I haven't said, or if you participated in the extra credit opportunity. Listen, I gave an extra credit opportunity. It was worth 10 points. That's half of one of the outline assignments or one of the self-assessment assignments. So that was a big point value. And not every student in the class has taken advantage of that. If you watch the lectures. You know what I'm talking about. I'll extend you a couple of more days, not very much longer, to take advantage of that opportunity. If you have emailed me or sent me a message through Canvas and told me that you know the information necessary to get the extra credit points, then I have already applied those points in Canvas. Up to this point, I've done everybody that I know in Canvas. It's under the reading assignment for week 2, which is generally those are left blank. They're 0 point value, and I just put the points in there, and that adds it onto your total score without affecting averages. So it makes it bonus points. If you don't see those extra points, 5 or 10 points, depending on how much of the bonus you took advantage of, then please, and you've sent me an email and you don't see that, then please let me know so I can correct it. God bless you. I hope you have a great week.